Hello dear students, and welcome to this series of lectures in botany. Today we will be talking about bacteria structure. Before we talk about the structure of bacteria, let me tell you something what bacteria actually are. Bacteria are the most abundant and diversified group of single-celled prokaryotic microorganisms on Earth, adapted for varied living conditions, be it air, soil, water, ranging from most ancient lineages of extreme thermophilic chemosynthetic autotrophs that reduce gaseous hydrogen and sulfur to the lineages of photosynthetic autotrophs, which are represented by the cyanobacteria. Phylogenetic analysis of this diversified group of microorganisms through molecular approach reveal that 12 major lineages or kingdoms of bacteria do exist. And as I told you, this is a diverse world. If you take a pinch of soil in the palm of your hand, expectedly there are more than 10,000 different species of bacteria in it. And with all possible cultural combinations, we will not be able to culture more than 500 species of them approximately. For rest of the species, we have to devise the appropriate media and the environmental conditions. But recent molecular approaches and metagenomic analysis has allowed us getting a deep insight into the structural complexity as well as community profiles of these cryptic microorganisms. So for the structure of bacteria is concerned, it has two principal components: the external or the morphological dimension and the internal dimension. Morphology includes size, shape, and arrangement. So for their size is concerned, since they are microscopic in nature, they are very small, from 0.5 to 1 micrometer in diameter generally, due to which they have very high surface area to volume ratio. This is a very important thing. And this surface area to volume ratio being high compensates for their so many functions which rest of the organelles such as mitochondria, chloroplast, or other membrane-bound organelles do in eukaryotes, keeping in view their small volume. And so for the shapes of the bacteria are concerned, they fall in three principal shapes. The rods, what we also call as bacilli, the spheres, what we also call as cocci, and spirals, what we sometimes refer also as spirillum type of the bacteria. And so for the arrangement is concerned, these rods or these spheres can either be present singly or they can be paired. When they are paired, we call them as, say, Diplococcus or Diplobacillus. When they are in chains, we call them as Streptobacilli or Streptococci. Likewise, they can be sometimes present in the form of grape-like structures or clusters when we call them as Staphylo type of arrangement. The examples of these types are concerned. Rods also vary in shape and they can be slender, for example, in case of typhoid fever causing bacterium, or they can be rectangular, as in case of the anthrax causing agent, or in some cases they are club-shaped, for example, diphtheria bacteria. Likewise, Streptobacilli, so far are concerned, they are the chains of rods, as I told you. Many rods in forming a chain. And cocci, so far are concerned, they can be diplococci when two spheres are present as a pair, as we see in case of the bacteria that cause gonorrhea. And streptococci when they are present in the form of the chains, for example, those found in case of the intestines or involved in a particular disease of that strep throat. Then Sarcina type is a typical type of a bacterial shape wherein we have a cube-like packet of 8 cocci, as we see in case of Micrococcus luteus. Then Staphylococcus, they are irregular grape-like clusters. The number of spheres in them is not specific, as we see in case of the Staphylococcus aureus. And there is again a term, related term, Staphylospirillum, when we have grape-like clusters of spirals. And then another principal shape of the bacteria, as I told you earlier also, is the Vibrio or the spiral bacteria, which may either be curved rods, as we see in case of the Vibrio cholerae, or they may be corkscrew shaped, for example, spirochetes. So far the internal dimensions are concerned, or the cell structure of the bacteria is concerned, there are n number of components of this bacterial cell. Starting from, say, outside inwards, if we go, if bacteria are motile, they have flagella, the locomotory organs, they have the pili for attachment. Then they have a layer of depositions outside the cell wall in the form of the capsule. Then there is a cell wall. Inside the cell wall, there is a plasma membrane. Then there are some other membrane-like structures, what we call as mesosomes. Of course, some people refer them as artifacts. Then there are some specific kind of things in, say, gram-positive bacteria only, not in the gram-negative bacteria, as teichoic acids. Then lipopolysaccharides are an important component of their cell wall. Then there is a matrix of cytoplasm, wherein we do not have the membrane-bound organelles, but we do have ribosomes of, say, 70S type, then some inclusion bodies, and some spores, and so on and so forth. When we compare the structure with the eukaryotic cell, we do not find in them a well-developed nucleus. We do not find in prokaryotes or in bacteria the membrane-bound organelles. So, relatively speaking, it is a simpler cellular level of organization. Well, let's talk about these bacterial structures or the components of a bacterial cell one by one in some detail. First, let's talk in some detail about the flagella. As I told you, flagella are the appendages that help in motility of the bacteria or in movement of the bacteria from one place to the other. And about half of the all known bacteria are motile due to the presence of flagella. And these flagella vary in number as well as placement, and their arrangement, let me tell you, is an important basis for bacterial classification. For example, when we have only one flagella at one end of the bacterium, we call it as monotrichous, as we see in case of the Pseudomonas aeruginosa. When we have two flagella with one at each end, it is a condition what we call as amphitrichous type of distribution, as we see in case of the Aquaspirillum serpens. Third is the Lophotrichous, where we have tufts of flagella at one or both the ends of the bacteria, for example, Pseudomonas fluorescens. And another condition is Peritrichous, where we have flagella present all around the body, as we see in case of the Salmonella typhi. And some bacteria which do not have any kind of the flagella, they are referred to as atrichous. Let me tell you, flagellum is also present in some eukaryotes also. We have some flagellated eukaryotes. But so far the prokaryotic flagellum is concerned, it is about 1/10 of the eukaryotic flagellum in size and is about 10 to 20 micrometers in length. And this bacterial flagellum also differs from the eukaryotic flagellum in lacking typical microtubules with 9+2 arrangement and also a plasma membrane. It's not there. These bacterial flagella are composed of long, rigid strands of proteins, specific protein called as flagellin. which are arranged in the form of chains and wound around a triple helix with a hollow central core inside. And each flagellum, in fact, is attached to a cell membrane by a basal region connecting or consisting of proteins other than flagellin. And a flagellum, if we divide it for the sake of convenience, has three important parts. It has a basal body, which is associated with the cell membrane and the cell wall. But the basal body has an important role to play. Let me tell you here that the basal body consists of a central rod or a shaft surrounded by a set of rings, as we see in case of the machines or the drivers. Gram-positive and gram-negative bacteria differ here, let me tell you. And it's an important point that gram-negative bacteria have two pairs of rings. One pair in the cell membrane and another in the cell wall. But gram-positive bacteria do have just one pair of rings. When flagella bundle together, they rotate counterclockwise and allow bacteria to basically run in a straight line. Then it has a hook that attaches the basal body with another part, that is the helical filament. Related to flagella is a structure what we call as pili. Pili are hair-like structures which are composed again of a specific protein or protein subunits called as pilin. And they are hollow, non-helical, tiny filamentous appendages that are thinner, shorter and more numerous than flagella. Let me tell you here that so for the functions of the pili are concerned, they are not involved in movement. Of course, they look like flagella, but as I told you, they are shorter. But their function is to allow attachment of the bacterium to the other bacteria and even to the other surfaces. And second important function is that they help the bacteria in conjugation for allowing the genetic material to pass on from one bacterial cell to the other, what we specifically call as F-pili or sex pili. The former, which help in the attachment, we call them as attachment pili, or fimbri also at times. This was about the flagella and the pili. Now let me tell you again here. Outside the cell wall, there is a deposition of several things, and we have certain terms that you see in books generally, like capsule, slime layer, glycocalyx, to explain these things. So for the capsule is concerned, a sticky, gelatinous and protective layer is capsule, which is formed from the polysaccharides, different kinds of polysaccharides and even polypeptides or both, surrounding a cell wall. It's found only in certain bacteria, not in all the bacteria. For example, mostly it is found in bacilli and cocci and not in the spiral type of the bacteria. All inclusive term for all kinds of depositions, especially the polysaccharides containing different kinds of substances which are found external to the cell wall, from thinner slime layer to the thicker capsule, and all inclusive term is glycocalyx, and it is a currently acceptable term for all kinds of depositions surrounding the cell wall. Glycocalyx or the capsule slime layer complex has some important functions to play in case of the bacteria. The most important function is that it serves as a buffer between the cell and its external environment. The second important function is that it prevents the cell against drying and dehydration because it has high moisture content in it. The third important function is it helps bacteria to trap nutrients, and of course it also protects nutrients basically to flow away from the bacterial cell. Another important function is that it also facilitates disease establishment, because so for the encapsulated bacteria are concerned, they cannot be easily phagocytosed by the host defense mechanism. Now we come to the cell wall, a very, very important component of the bacterial cell. And in fact, it is the presence of the cell wall that is very important, because this cell wall, of course, is present in all bacteria except mycoplasmas, which are also called as wall-less bacteria. The important and two principal functions, in fact, of the cell wall are, number one, that it determines the shape of the bacteria. Bacteria are able to have a particular type of a shape only because of this rigidity of the cell wall. Second important function is that it provides strength and prevents osmotic ruptures. These cell walls are generally made up of a typical kind of a polysaccharide, peptidoglycans, which is a complex of, in fact, amino acids and the sugars. And it is unique to bacteria, so far the composition is concerned. Otherwise, we have cell walls in plants also, but composition is altogether different. And that's why bacteria were separated from the plants. And this peptidoglycan comprises about 20 to 40% of bacteria in general. Of course, there are differences in quantum of peptidoglycan in gram-positive and gram-negative bacteria. The peptidoglycan polymer, what we also call as murine, is the single most important component of the bacterial cell wall, which is composed of alternating units of two amino-containing carbohydrates or sugars, N-acetyl glucosamine and second is N-acetyl muramic acid. Amino acids cross-link the N-acetyl glucosamine and N-acetyl muramic acid. And the peptidoglycan occurs in fact multiple layers connected by a side chain of 4 amino acids and forms a supporting net around the bacterium. However, let me tell you here that different bacteria can have different amino acids in the tetrapeptide chain as well as have different cross-links. But a principal distinction between gram-positive and gram-negative bacteria is that in gram-positive bacteria, third amino acid is generally lysine, which in case of gram-negative bacteria is diaminopalmitic acid. There is a clear-cut distinction between gram-positive bacteria and gram-negative bacteria. If we discuss them point by point, so for the important distinctions are concerned, in gram-positive bacteria, the peptidoglycan layer is very thick, but it is relatively thinner in case of gram-negative bacteria. Then we have a specific kind of substance, what we call as teicholic acid, which is in fact complex of glycerol, phosphates and the ribitol, which helps in the attachment of OH and so on. This teicholic acid is present only in case of gram-positive bacteria, but not in case of the gram-negative bacteria. Then we have an outer membrane. Generally outside the cell wall, we do not have a membrane, but in case of gram-negative bacteria, we do have a membrane. In case of gram-positive bacteria, we do not have a membrane. And as a result of that membrane, the periplasmic space is absent in case of gram-positive bacteria. Periplasmic space is the space between the cell wall and the cell membrane. There are some specific kinds of polysaccharides, what we call as lipopolysaccharides or LPS, also call them as endotoxins, present on the walls of especially gram-negative bacteria, which are composed of lipid A and a polysaccharide. And these endotoxins are sometimes also called as pyrogens because they are the causatives of the fever, general fever. And their function, the function of these endotoxins is, since they are toxic, they are too toxic and they kill mice, they kill pigs, humans or whatsoever the other types of hosts. Well, having discussed this cell wall structure, an important component that comes afterwards just inside the cell wall is the cell membrane. Cell membrane, as I told you, is an important component of bacterial cell, which is composed of lipid bilayer with some proteins, and it is a selectively permeable membrane. Of course, too flexible, but too dynamic. Generally, there are 60% around proteins and 40% lipids. This, as I told you, is a dynamic and active membrane. Therefore, it regulates the movement of materials into and outside the bacterial cells. Then again, an important function of this cell membrane is that it serves as an anchor for the attachment of DNA during its replication in the bacteria. Significant kind of difference between phospholipids of eubacteria and archaebacteria. Let me tell you here, archaebacteria are those bacteria which generally live in extremely harsh conditions, and we see that they represent the ancient lineage of the early evolving bacteria. In eubacteria, phospholipids and phosphoglycerides in which straight chain fatty acids are ester linked to glycerol. And in case of archaebacteria, the lipids are polyisoprenoid branched chain lipids in which long chain branched alcohol or the phytanols are ether linked to glycerol. Then there is internal membrane system also in the bacteria, mesosomes, which represent the invaginations of the plasma membrane in the shape of vesicles, tubules and lamellae and so on. These are present in both gram-positive and gram-negative bacteria, but more prominently they are found in the former than the later. few functions have been just attributed to them. They may be involved in cell wall formation during the cell division. Then second function is they may play a role in the chromosome replication and distribution due to daughter cells. The third attributed role to them is that they may be involved in some secretory processes. Next is the cytoplasm. Cytoplasm, as you know, in general, in case of rest of the cells also, it is a semi-fluid substance, usually comprised of 80% or more at times of water and 20% of rest of the things, including salts, proteins, carbohydrates, lipids, nucleic acids, and so on. Phenomenon what we call as cytoplasmic streaming is generally present, but this cytoplasmic streaming is absent in case of prokaryotes or bacteria. And mitochondria or Golgi bodies or the other chloroplasts, the membrane-bound organelles, are present in the cytoplasm, as we generally find in case of the eukaryotic cells. And ribosomes, of course, they are present in case of eukaryotic cells also, but they are of 80S type. In prokaryotes or in bacteria, ribosomes are of 70S type, and they are attached either to the plasma membrane or they are present in the matrix. There is a functional difference between the two. Since ribosomes are the protein factories, they are involved in the process of protein synthesis. Those which are attached to the membrane are involved in the synthesis of such proteins that are to be exported. Then there are inclusion bodies, which refers to a variety of small bodies, including granules and vesicles and so on and so forth. There are specific kind of vesicles, or called as gas vesicles, which are especially present in case of the aquatic bacteria that help them to have that buoyancy and floating action on the water. And so far the granules are concerned, they do contain very densely packed, compact substances which do not dissolve in cytoplasm. And each granule contains specific substances such as, say, glycogen, polyphosphate granules, which are for storage, then PHBs, polyhydroxybutyrate granules, which are for carbon storage. In addition to these things, in bacterial cytoplasm, there are some specific kinds of proteins, what we call as chaperones or heat shock proteins. Let's now talk about bacterial genome, which is also present in the cytoplasm. As you know, bacteria do not have a specific membrane around their nucleus or a nuclear membrane. They do not have a well-defined nucleus, but they have a nucleoid, and it is that nucleoid wherein we have bacterial DNA. As in two locations it is generally found, in the circular chromosome, which may be attached to the cell membrane, or it may be present in the much smaller unattached circular plasmids. So far DNA is concerned, DNA is circular and it's haploid, and the advantages of this haploid or 1N DNA to 2N or diploid DNA are many. It's more efficient, it helps grow quicker, it allows mutations and adaptations to the environment quicker. The plasmids have a specific importance. Plasmids are the extracircular DNA, and they are involved in the antibiotic resistance of these bacteria. At the last, let's have a word about endospores, which are specific kinds of spores formed under very harsh environmental conditions, and they are very resistant to heat, irradiation, cold, and other kinds of stresses. Even if we boil these spores for 1 hour or so, they will be still viable in most of the cases. And it takes bacteria both time and energy to make these spores. Their location in bacteria is very important in their classification, whether they are central, they are subterminal, or they are terminal, and so on and so forth. And these endospores are used for some specific purposes. For example, Bacillus stereothermophilus spores. They are used for quality control of heat sterilization equipment. Likewise, Bacillus anthracis spores are used in biological warfare. And so far their structural complexities are concerned, they vary in their shape, in size, in their forms, and in their arrangements, and so on. To conclude with, let me tell you that this diverse world of bacteria is structurally also very complex, and we have detailed so many structural components that are important in case of the bacteria. And I hope this might have given you a good insight of the understanding of the bacterial structure. To talk about the next things, we'll meet in the next lecture. Till then, goodbye.